Admiral So-Ra Kim's voice crackled through every communication channel in the Kepler system. Her words reached not just the Nexus station, but every ship, every satellite, every listening post within a dozen light-years. The message was simple and clear. All human vessels, this is Admiral Kim. Operation Exodus is now active. Repeat, Exodus is active. On the Nexus station, the alien representatives pressed against the viewing windows, watching in disbelief as human ships throughout the system began moving. It was not a retreat or an attack. It was something they had never seen before, an entire species simply deciding to leave. The coordination was perfect. Merchant vessels that had been trading at the station's markets suddenly closed their cargo bays and powered up their engines. Military escorts that had been patrolling the outer system changed course and headed for the jump point. Research ships, mining vessels, even tiny courier craft, all of them moving at the same time, all heading in the same direction. "This cannot be happening," muttered Supreme Commander Thosgrak. His clawed hand scraped against the crystal window as he watched a human cargo ship drift past the station. The ship was massive, designed to carry supplies between star systems. Now it was leaving, taking with it medicines and technologies that several alien worlds depended on. Chancellor Zethmar's crystal form pulsed with rapid, agitated light. "They are bluffing." They must be. No species abandons an entire system without warning. But as they watched, it became clear this was no bluff. The humans were not just leaving the system. They were leaving everything behind. Food shipments that were supposed to go to Vorthak colonies sat abandoned in cargo bays. Medical supplies that the Luminary had ordered for their energy-based healing centers were floating in containers that nobody claimed. Dr. Tai Jin. Lee stood near the shuttle bay where the human diplomatic vessel waited. He looked relaxed, almost casual, as he watched the alien representatives panic around him. Several of them had left the meeting room and were now running through the station's corridors, trying to contact their governments or figure out what was happening. "You cannot simply leave," Chancellor Zethmar said, her voice taking on a desperate edge. "There are contracts, trade agreements, diplomatic protocols." Dr. Lee looked at her with mild interest. "Protocols that you just spent 2 hours explaining you planned to tear up anyway." The Kethari representative, his blue skin now pale with worry, stepped forward. "The economic disruption alone. Dozens of worlds depend on human trade routes. The shipping schedules, the supply chains will have to be rebuilt without us," Ambassador Park said calmly. He had finished packing his belongings and now stood watching the last few human vessels clear the station's immediate area. "You made it very clear that you consider us a problem to be solved. Well, problems that leave are no longer problems." Through the station's communication systems, they could hear frantic chatter as alien ships tried to track the human fleet. Scout vessels were launching from various docking bays, their crews desperate to follow the humans and see where they were going. But something strange was happening to those scout ships. They would get close to the human formation and then nothing. No explosions, no battles, no damage. The scout ships would simply find themselves somewhere else, usually drifting harmlessly several thousand kilometers away from where they started. "How are they doing that?" demanded the hive mind speaker, its multiple eyes focusing on readings from its own scouts. Admiral Kim's voice came through the communication system again, but this time she sounded amused. "To any vessels attempting to follow human ships, please maintain a safe distance. We do not wish to damage your vessels, but we will not be followed." One of the Vorthak scouts tried to get closer anyway. It was a fast ship designed for stealth and pursuit. But as it approached the human formation, space around it seemed to twist. The ship spun out of control for a moment, then found itself floating peacefully near a mining asteroid, its crew confused but unhurt. "Impossible," breathed Zeftalon. His energy form flickered rapidly. "Our sensors show no weapons fire, no energy discharges. How are they moving our ships?" Dr. Lee glanced at his watch, a simple mechanical device that looked ancient compared to the advanced technology around him. "Time to go," he said. The human shuttle was small compared to most of the ships around the station. It looked ordinary, almost primitive next to the sleek alien vessels with their exotic hulls and impossible technologies. But as Dr. Lee and the other humans boarded, something changed about the space around it. The shuttle began to glow with the same silver and gold light they had seen around the departing fleet. Not bright enough to hurt the eyes, but noticeable, like starlight reflecting off water. "Wait," called out Supreme Commander Thosgrak. He had left the meeting room and was now standing in the shuttle bay, his massive form blocking the path to other ships. "You must tell us where you are going." Ambassador Park paused at the shuttle's airlock. "Must we? Your species cannot survive alone in the void. You need trade resources, protection. The galaxy is dangerous for those without allies." "The galaxy is dangerous," Park agreed, "but not in the way you think." Admiral Kim was already in the pilot's seat running through pre-flight checks. Through the shuttle's small windows, they could see the last of the human fleet reaching jump distance. The space around them was beginning to ripple with that strange energy. "This is madness," said Chancellor Zethmar. She had followed the Vorthak commander into the shuttle bay, along with several other alien representatives. "You will doom your entire species over pride." "Pride?" Dr. Lee looked genuinely confused. "You think this is about pride?" He gestured toward the viewing screens that showed star charts of human space. 53 worlds scattered across maybe 100 light years. It was tiny compared to the alien empires, but each of those worlds represented millions of human lives. "You offered us slavery with better food," Dr. Lee continued. "Supervision instead of slaughter. Restrictions instead of extinction. And you expected us to be grateful?" "We offered survival," the hive mind speaker insisted. "You offered existence," Admiral Kim called from the pilot's seat. "Humans require more than existence." The shuttle's engines were warming up now, adding their own glow to the silver and gold light that surrounded the vessel. Through the station's communication system, they could hear reports from across human space. On world after world, the same thing was happening. Human ships were leaving, all at the same time, all heading for unknown destinations. "The colonies," whispered the Cathari representative. "What about the colonies?" "There are millions of humans living on those worlds." "Were," Ambassador Park corrected. Past tense. The implications hit the aliens like a physical blow. This was not just a diplomatic walkout. This was not just the human fleet leaving one system. Somehow humanity was evacuating everything, everyone, everywhere, all at once. "Impossible," Tossagrak rumbled. "The logistics alone. Moving millions of people, the ships required, the coordination, would be impossible using your understanding of physics," Dr. Lee agreed. He was checking something on a small device that looked like a simple tablet. "Fortunately, your understanding is limited." Outside the station, the last human cargo vessel reached the jump point. The space around it twisted and folded, and the ship vanished into that strange silver-gold light. Within moments, the entire human fleet was gone, but the truly unsettling part was the silence that followed. Normally, when ships jumped to other star systems, there were traces left behind. Energy signatures, gravitational disturbances, radiation that could be tracked and followed. Scout ships could analyze the remains and figure out where the departed vessels had gone. This time, there was nothing. No traces, no signatures, no clues. It was as if the human ships had simply stopped existing. "Where did they go?" Chancellor Zethmar asked, her crystal form now pulsing with confused patterns. Ambassador Park was the last human to board the shuttle. At the airlock, he turned back one final time to look at the alien representatives who had gathered to watch them leave. "The universe is vast," he said, echoing Dr. Lee's earlier words. "Much vaster than you have ever imagined. There are places between the stars, spaces between spaces, dimensions you do not know exist." "That is impossible." Zeftalon's energy form flickered with agitation. "Our science has mapped the galaxy. Our explorations have reached the edge of known space. There are no hidden dimensions, no secret places. Your science," Admiral Kim called from the pilot's seat, "is based on what you can see from here, what you can reach with your current technology, what you can understand with your current thinking." She activated the shuttle's systems, and the vessel began to lift off from the station's deck. The silver-gold light grew stronger, and space around the shuttle began to shimmer like heat waves. "You see only 3 dimensions," Dr. Lee added, his voice carrying through the shuttle's communication system as it rose. "You think in terms of distance measured in light years, of travel that takes weeks or months between stars. You imagine the universe as a flat map with edges you can find and borders you can cross." The shuttle was clear of the station now, accelerating toward the same point where the human fleet had vanished. 6 months after the humans walked away from the Nexus station, Supreme Commander Thossagrak stood in his war room, staring at a holographic display of the galaxy. Red markers showed Vorthak territory, green showed their allies, and small blue dots had once marked human colonies. The blue dots were still there on the map. But they meant nothing now. Report, Thosagrak rumbled to his intelligence officer. A smaller Vorthak named Kestar. The same as last month, sir. New Harmony shows no life signs. The cities are intact. The power systems are still running, but there are no humans anywhere on the planet. Our teams have searched every building, every tunnel, every hiding place they could find. Thosagrak's claws clicked against the metal table. New Harmony had been one of humanity's most successful colonies, home to nearly 3 million people. The planet grew food that fed a dozen other human worlds and produced medical supplies that several alien species had come to depend on. Now it was empty. What about the other worlds? The same, sir. Terra Nova, Haven's Rest, New Shanghai, all empty. The evacuation was complete. No bodies, no signs of fighting, no indication of where they went. This had been the pattern across all of human space. Vorthak scout fleets had moved in quickly after the humans disappeared, expecting to find abandoned colonies ripe for conquest. Instead, they found ghost towns. The cities were intact but empty. The farms were still growing crops, but no one was there to harvest them. Factories hummed with automated production, creating goods for people who no longer existed. It was like walking through a museum of human civilization, perfectly preserved but completely lifeless. In another part of the galaxy, Chancellor Zethmar of the Silicon Confederacy was having similar problems. Her crystal form pulsed with frustrated patterns as she reviewed reports from her exploration teams. The quantum resonance scanners detect nothing, reported her science advisor, a younger crystal being whose name translated roughly to sharp light through prisms. Not just no humans. No traces that humans were ever there. It is as if they have been erased from reality itself. This was what troubled Zethmar most. The Silicon Confederacy's technology could track individual atoms across light years. Their quantum scanners could detect the genetic signatures of any living being, even from DNA samples that were millions of years old. They should have been able to find some trace of where the humans had gone, but there was nothing. Worse than nothing, it was as if the humans had never existed at all. What about the deep space monitoring stations? Zethmar asked. Surely they detected the human ships leaving. Sharp light through prisms' form flickered with uncertainty. That is the disturbing part, Chancellor. Our stations recorded the ships gathering at jump points, but then silence. Not the normal signature of ships jumping to other systems. Not destruction or cloaking, just nothing. In the Luminary Collective's home dimension, Zeph Talon floated among his fellow energy beings, sharing thoughts and concerns through direct mental connection. The Luminari could perceive things that solid beings could not. Energy patterns, dimensional fluctuations, the quantum foam that existed between normal space and time. But even they had found no trace of humanity. It violates everything we know about the nature of existence, pulsed one of Zeph Talon's advisors, a bright being called Dawn Between Thoughts. Matter cannot simply cease to exist. Energy cannot be destroyed. The humans must have gone somewhere. Unless, suggested another advisor, they went somewhere that exists outside our understanding of where. The thought was disturbing to beings who prided themselves on understanding the deepest mysteries of reality. The Luminari had explored dimensions that solid creatures could not even imagine. They had touched the quantum foundations of the universe itself. Yet somehow an entire species had vanished beyond their ability to track. The economic effects were becoming impossible to ignore. The galactic trade networks had grown dependent on human efficiency and innovation over the past decades. Human ships carried cargo between systems faster and more reliably than anyone else. Human colonies produced food, medicine, and technology that dozens of alien worlds needed. With the humans gone, shipping schedules collapsed. Supply chains broke down. Entire sectors of the galactic economy that had been built around human trade routes simply stopped functioning. On the Cathari homeworld, blue-skinned merchants stood in empty marketplaces that had once bustled with human traders. The humans had brought exotic goods from their scattered colonies, rare minerals, unique foods, artistic works that had become prized throughout Cathari space. Now the markets were quiet, and the Cathari were beginning to understand how much they had depended on the species they had dismissed as primitives. The medical supplies, worried Veltar, one of the Cathari trade ministers. The humans produce 60% of the anti-radiation drugs our mining worlds need. Without those drugs, our miners will die, finished his colleague grimly. or we will have to abandon the mining operations entirely. It was the same story across the galaxy. The Xerian hive mind discovered that human agricultural techniques had been feeding billions of their workers. The Silicon Confederacy learned that human computer systems had been handling much of their data processing. The Vorthak Empire realized that human mechanical expertise had been keeping their older ships operational. Humanity had woven itself into the fabric of galactic civilization so thoroughly that removing it left tears everywhere. But the most disturbing reports came from the frontier worlds, the planets on the edge of known space where few ships traveled and fewer still stayed long. A Vorthak patrol vessel reported gravitational anomalies near the Kepler 438 system. Space itself seemed to be bending in ways that made no sense, creating gravity fields that pulled in directions that did not exist. A luminary exploration team investigating strange energy, readings in the void between galaxies, reported seeing structures that appeared and disappeared like mirages. When they tried to get closer, the structures faded away, leaving only the cold emptiness of intergalactic space. Most unsettling of all were the ships. They appeared without warning on the edge of sensor range, vessels that matched no known design. They moved through space in ways that defied physics, changing direction without acceleration, traveling at speeds that should have been impossible. When alien ships tried to approach or communicate, the unknown vessels simply vanished, leaving no trace they had ever been there. The designs are unfamiliar, reported a Cathari scout captain who had encountered one such ship, but there was something about the way it moved, something about its energy signature. It felt human. Supreme Commander Thosagrak was beginning to suspect the same thing. The unknown ships appeared most often near systems that had once contained human colonies. They never attacked, never threatened, but their presence was unmistakable. "They are watching us," he told his war council. "The humans are out there somewhere, and they are watching what we do with the worlds they left behind." Chancellor Zethmar had reached a similar conclusion. Her science teams had detected massive construction signatures in the deep void between galaxies, energy patterns that suggested building projects on a scale that dwarfed anything known civilization had ever attempted. "The power requirements alone are staggering," reported Sharp Light through prisms. "Whatever they are building out there, it is larger than our homeworld." Multiple signatures suggest dozens of such constructions. Construction of what? Zethmar asked. Unknown. The energy patterns do not match any known technology. But the quantum resonance suggests, Chancellor, this may sound impossible, but the resonance patterns suggest they are building in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Zethmar's crystal form flickered with disbelief. That is impossible. Matter cannot exist in multiple dimensions at once. According to our current understanding, yes. But what if our understanding is incomplete? The question hung in the air like a challenge to everything the Silicon Confederacy thought they knew about reality. Similar reports were coming in from across the galaxy. The Luminari detected dimensional fluctuations in areas of space that should have been empty. The hive mind's deep space sensors picked up gravitational waves that suggested massive objects moving in patterns that made no sense. Most disturbing of all, several alien expeditions to the edge of the galaxy reported the same thing. The darkness between galaxies was not empty. There were lights out there, structures that seemed to span distances measured in millions of light years, cities that existed in the void where nothing should be able to survive. And all of it felt human. The alien powers began to meet more frequently, sharing information and growing fears. What had started as a simple desire to control human territory had become something much more complex and frightening. "We may have made an error," Zeph Talon admitted during one such meeting. The energy being's form was dimmer than usual, showing his distress. "We assumed humanity was limited by the same constraints that limit us. We thought in terms of resources, territory, conventional physics. What if we were wrong?" asked Chancellor Zethmar. "What if humanity was not limited by those things at all?" Supreme Commander Thosagrak stared at the holographic display showing empty human worlds. 2 years after humanity vanished from known space, Supreme Commander Thosagrak was reviewing patrol reports when his communication officer burst into the war room without knocking. In Vorthak culture, this was almost unthinkable. Junior officers did not interrupt their superiors, especially not during private work time. But the young officer's crest was flared in panic, and his voice shook as he spoke. Sir, there is a ship. A human ship. It just appeared. Thosagrak set down his data pad and fixed the officer with a steady stare. Appeared where? Outside the homeworld, sir. Right in front of the orbital defense grid. Not jumped in, not traveled there. It just appeared. The Supreme Commander felt a chill run down his spine. The Vorthak homeworld was the most heavily defended planet in their empire. Hundreds of sensor platforms monitored every cubic meter of space within a light year. Nothing could approach without being detected hours in advance. Nothing except, apparently, human ships, show me, Thosagrak ordered. The main display screen flickered to life, showing a view from the orbital defense station. There, floating serenely among the massive weapons platforms and patrol ships, was a human vessel. It was larger than the diplomatic ships from 2 years ago, sleeker somehow, with hull plates that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. More unsettling was the way space bent around it. The starfield behind the ship was distorted, as if the vessel existed partially in some other dimension, with only part of it visible in normal space. Have they made any demands? Thosagrak asked. Just one message, sir. Text only. The communication officer's voice was barely above a whisper. It says we need to talk. This time we choose the terms. The message had been sent directly to Thosagrak's personal communication channel, bypassing all security systems and encryption protocols. Somehow the humans knew exactly how to reach him, despite the fact that his communication codes were changed daily and known only to his most trusted advisors. Sir, the officer continued, the ship is requesting permission to dock at Station Prime. Station Prime was the Vorthak Empire's primary orbital facility, a massive structure that housed the government offices, military command centers, and diplomatic quarters. It was also heavily armed and protected by the most advanced defensive systems the Vorthak could build. Thosagrak considered his options. He could order the defense grid to open fire, but something told him that would be a mistake. The human ship had appeared inside their defenses without triggering a single alarm. If they could do that, what else might they be capable of? Grant permission, he decided, but maintain full alert status, and send a message to the other coalition leaders. Tell them the humans have returned. An hour later, Thosagrak stood in the main docking bay of Station Prime, surrounded by his personal guard and trying to project an aura of calm confidence he did not feel. Through the massive viewing windows, he could see the human ship approaching the docking clamps. Up close, the vessel was even more disturbing. Its hull seemed to be made of some material that was not quite solid, not quite energy. Patterns flowed across its surface like living things, and occasionally he could swear he saw glimpses of other places through the metal. Distant stars, impossible cities, spaces that hurt to look at directly. The docking process itself was unnervingly smooth. Most ships required careful maneuvering to align with the station's docking clamps. This human vessel simply flowed into position, its hull adjusting and reshaping itself to match the station's docking interface perfectly. When the airlock opened, Ambassador Hyunwoo Park stepped out. He looked exactly as he had 2 years ago. The same gray hair, the same calm eyes, the same simple black suit. But there was something different about him now, something that made Thosagrak's warrior instinct scream warnings. Park moved too smoothly, as if gravity affected him differently than it should. His eyes held depths that seemed to contain starlight, and the air around him shimmered occasionally, as if reality itself was not quite solid in his presence. Behind him came Admiral Sora Kim and Dr. Taejin Lee. They had changed too, in the same subtle but profound ways. They moved like beings who had learned secrets about the nature of existence itself. Supreme Commander, Park said, nodding politely. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. Thosagrak found his voice with an effort. Where have you been? Building, Park replied simply. Learning, growing. Growing into what? Dr. Lee smiled, and for a moment his face seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Something better than what we were. Something worthy of the universe we discovered. Admiral Kim gestured toward the viewing windows where space had been empty just moments before. Now it was filled with human ships. Dozens of them, each one massive and impossible. Their hulls shifting between dimensions like living things made of folded space. We have come to make you an offer, Admiral Kim announced. The same one you made us 2 years ago. Thosagrak's throat ruff flared in confusion. What offer? Surrender, Park said calmly. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Around the docking bay, Vorthak guards shifted nervously, their hands moving instinctively toward their weapons. But something about the three humans made violence seem not just futile, but pointless. "You dare?" Thosagrak growled, falling back on anger to mask his fear. "Our fleets number in the hundreds of thousands. Our worlds span half the galaxy. Your entire species could not what?" Dr. Lee interrupted gently. "Could not do this?" He gestured casually toward the viewing windows. The space around the station began to change. Stars that had been fixed points of light started to move, sliding across the sky in impossible patterns. The orbital defense platforms, massive structures built to withstand the firepower of entire fleets, began to drift gently away from the station as if they weighed nothing. But the most terrifying sight was what lay beyond the defense grid. There, hanging in space like a small moon, was a structure that defied description. It was part city, part ship, part something that had no name in any language Thosagrak knew. The structure seemed to exist in several dimensions at once. Parts of it were solid metal and crystal. Others were pure energy held in geometric patterns, and still others appeared to be made of folded space itself. Cities and forests grew on its surface, but they followed no laws of physics that made sense to Vorthak science. "What is that?" Thosagrak whispered. "Home," Admiral Kim replied. "One of them, anyway. We have built many homes in the past 2 years." Through the station's communication systems, emergency alerts began sounding. Vorthak ships throughout the system were reporting impossible readings, gravitational anomalies, energy signatures that broke their instruments, sensor contacts that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. "This is impossible," Thosagrak said, but his voice lacked conviction. "So was your demand that we surrender our worlds and our freedom," Park observed. "So was your assumption that we were limited by the same constraints that limit you?" Dr. Lee moved to stand by the viewing windows, looking out at the impossible city ship that floated in Vorthak space like a statement of power beyond imagination. "We found something out there in the dark between galaxies," he said quietly. "An old civilization that learned what we have learned, that reality has layers, dimensions beyond the three, you know, spaces between spaces where different laws apply." On screens throughout the station, images began appearing. Vorthak sensors, pushed beyond their design limits, were picking up glimpses of other places, human colonies that existed in folded space, thriving on worlds that technically did not exist, cities that spanned multiple dimensions, their buildings reaching into realities that Vorthak science insisted were impossible, technologies that treated the fundamental forces of physics like tools to be used, rather than barriers to be overcome. The beings who left these gifts for us were ancient when your species first looked up at the stars, Dr. Lee continued. They transcended the limitations of single-dimensional existence millions of years ago. They explored every galaxy, every dimension, every possibility that reality contains. "What happened to them?" Thosagrak asked, though part of him was afraid of the answer. "They moved on," Admiral Kim replied, "to layers of reality so far beyond our current understanding that we cannot even imagine them. But before they left, they prepared gifts for those who would come after. Tools, knowledge, possibilities, why you?" The question came out as a growl. "Why did they choose humans?" Ambassador Park's smile was sad and knowing. "They did not choose us, Commander. They left the gifts for anyone who was ready to receive them. Anyone who was willing to walk away from the small, safe cage of known reality and step into the infinite darkness beyond." The implications hit Thosagrak like a physical blow. "We could have found them. Any of us could have, yes," Park agreed, but did not. When faced with the choice between controlling what you knew and exploring what you did not know, you chose control. When offered the chance to grow beyond your current limitations, you chose to force others to remain limited as well. Through the communication systems, reports were flooding in from across Vorthak space. Human vessels were appearing throughout the Empire, not attacking or threatening, but simply present. They hovered over major worlds, drifted through shipping lanes, observed military installations. The demonstration was brief, precise, and completely impossible. It began when Dr. Tae-Jin Lee pulled out the same simple tablet he had carried 2 years earlier at the Nexus station. He tapped it twice, and reality throughout the Vorthak system began to change. The first thing that happened was to the Vorthak fleet. 200 warships, each one a masterpiece of military engineering, suddenly found themselves somewhere else. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply relocated. One moment they were patrolling their assigned sectors. The next they were floating peacefully near the outer edge of the system, their crews unharmed but thoroughly confused. Impossible, breathed Supreme Commander Thosagrak, staring at the tactical displays that showed his entire fleet scattered across empty space like toys that had been gently moved by an invisible hand. Your word choice needs work, Admiral Sora Kim observed with mild amusement. The second demonstration was more dramatic. On the Vorthak homeworld, in the capital city of Korthmak, gravity suddenly reversed in a perfect sphere around the government district. Buildings, vehicles, and millions of Vorthak citizens found themselves floating gently upward for exactly 60 seconds before being set down, completely unharmed, exactly where they had been. The message was unmistakable. If humans could reverse gravity itself on a planetary scale, what else could they do? Dr. Lee tapped his tablet again, and the demonstrations spread throughout the galaxy. On the Silicon Confederacy's homeworld, Chancellor Sethmar watched in shock as every computer system in her civilization suddenly displayed the same message: mathematical proofs for technologies that the Confederacy's greatest scientists had deemed impossible. Equations for folding space, formulae for existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously, theoretical frameworks for transcending the normal limitations of physics. These calculations, whispered sharp light through prisms, his crystal form pulsing with rapid, confused patterns. They are beyond our current understanding, but they appear to be correct. Dr. Lee's voice echoed through the Silicon Confederacy's quantum communication network. Consider these gifts. Study them. Learn what we learned. The universe is far stranger and more wonderful than you imagined. In the Luminary Collective's dimension of pure energy, Zeftalin and his fellow beings experienced something that should have been impossible for creatures made of living light. They felt physical sensations. For one brief, startling moment, every luminary in the collective had the experience of existing in solid form, of feeling weight and texture and the strange limits of matter. When the sensation faded, they were left with a new understanding of what it meant to exist in multiple states simultaneously. The humans had somehow given energy beings the experience of matter, proving that the boundaries between different forms of existence were not as solid as they had believed. The hive mind of Zerion experienced perhaps the most disturbing demonstration of all. For the first time in millions of years, the constant background of shared consciousness that connected every member of their species went silent. Not destroyed, not blocked, simply quiet. For exactly 1 minute, each Zerion was alone in their own mind, experiencing individuality in a way their species had forgotten was possible. When the collective consciousness returned, it came with a new appreciation for the value of individual thought and the realization that their unity was a choice, not a biological inevitability. Throughout the galaxy, similar demonstrations occurred. The Cathari found their underwater cities briefly existing in air-filled bubbles, giving them the experience of breathing atmosphere for the first time in their evolutionary history. The crystal beings of the Altair Republic discovered that their mineral forms could temporarily become flexible, like living tissue. Each demonstration was gentle, harmless, and absolutely impossible according to current understanding of physical laws. Within hours, representatives from all 12 major galactic powers were requesting immediate meetings with human ambassadors. The meeting took place aboard humanity's dimensional city ship, in a conference room that existed partially outside normal spacetime. The alien representatives, wearing specially provided dimensional stabilizers just to remain coherent in the impossible space, found themselves facing the same 3 humans who had walked away from their ultimatum 2 years before. But now the balance of power had shifted completely. Ambassador Yunwoo Park sat at the head of a table that seemed to be made of crystallized space, its surface showing swirling patterns of stars and galaxies. Around him, the most powerful beings in known civilization waited nervously for him to speak. 2 years ago, Park began, his voice calm and professional. You offered us terms. Surrender our colonies, accept technological restrictions, submit to permanent supervision. In exchange, Earth would be spared destruction. He paused, looking around the table at the assembled representatives. Supreme Commander Thosagrak avoided his gaze. Chancellor Zethmar's crystal form pulsed with subdued, uncertain patterns. Even Zeftalon's energy field seemed dimmer than usual. Today we offer you terms, Park continued. The galaxy is vast enough for all of us, but it will be organized according to new principles. No more conquest wars between species. No more genocide. No more slavery in any form. Species that cannot coexist peacefully will be relocated to dimensions where they can thrive without conflict. He gestured toward the walls of the conference room, which showed views of the space between galaxies. Scattered across the cosmic void, massive structures gleamed like jewels. Human cities existing in folded space. Research stations that spanned multiple dimensions. Habitats that defied every law of physics the aliens thought they understood. In exchange, Park said, humanity shares what we have learned, medical technologies that extend life across all species, agricultural techniques that turn barren worlds into gardens, transportation methods that make travel between galaxies as simple as walking between rooms. Admiral Kim stood and activated a holographic display that showed technological blueprints floating in the air above the table. Gravity manipulation that allows any world to support any form of life. Energy sources that tap directly into the quantum foam of space itself. Communication systems that work instantly across any distance. Dr. Lee added his own contribution to the display. Images of worlds that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Cities that grew like living things. Technologies that seemed more like magic than science. The universe contains infinite possibilities, he said softly. We offer to share them with anyone willing to join us in exploring what lies beyond current limitations. Supreme Commander Thosagrak found his voice at last. And if we refuse? The three humans exchanged glances. When Park answered, his voice carried no threat. No anger, only a kind of gentle sadness. Then you remain here, in your current dimension with your current understanding, while we continue to grow into something you cannot imagine. The choice is yours, as it was always yours. Through the impossible walls of the conference room, the aliens could see human vessels moving through folded space like fish swimming through water. Some of the ships were the size of moons. Others seemed to exist in several dimensions at once, and a few appeared to be made of pure possibility given form. The demonstration was clear. Humanity had moved so far beyond conventional limitations that refusing their offer meant being left behind entirely. Chancellor Zethmar spoke first, her crystal form brightening with decision. The Silicon Confederacy accepts your terms. As does the Luminari Collective, added Zeftalon, his energy field stabilizing into patterns of acceptance. One by one, the other representatives agreed. The hive mind, still adjusting to their new understanding of individual choice, voted unanimously to join the human alliance. The Kethari, fascinated by the possibility of existing in multiple environments, accepted eagerly. Supreme Commander Thosagrak was the last to speak. For a moment he looked around the room at his fellow leaders, all of whom had once commanded vast fleets and ruled over billions of subjects. Now they sat in a space that should not exist, negotiating with beings who had transcended the very concept of limitation. The Vorthak Empire, he said slowly, accepts. The formal treaty was signed in a ceremony that took place simultaneously in 12 different dimensions, ensuring that beings from all levels of reality could witness and participate. The document itself was written on paper that existed in folded space, using ink made of crystallized starlight, with signatures that appeared in multiple dimensions at once. But the real change began in the months that followed. Human medical teams arrived on worlds throughout the galaxy, bringing healing technologies that could repair damage at the cellular level and extend healthy lifespans by centuries. Agricultural specialists taught alien farmers how to grow crops that thrived in any environment, turning desert worlds into gardens and ice planets into thriving colonies. Most importantly, human teachers began sharing the knowledge that had transformed their own species, not just the technical details of dimensional manipulation, but the philosophical understanding that reality was far larger and more flexible than anyone had imagined. Some species adapted quickly to the new possibilities. Captain Hyunwoo stood in the cold metal room deep under the ground. The walls were covered with screens that showed nothing but empty space and distant stars. He had been watching these screens for 10 years now, waiting for something that might never come. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he did not care. Today felt different. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. Other people worked at their desks around him, all of them watching the same empty screens. They were all part of Earth's biggest secret. For 300 years, the aliens had kept Earth trapped behind an invisible wall. They called it protection, but everyone knew it was a prison. The wall was made of something the aliens called quantum energy. It stopped Earth's ships from leaving the solar system. It also stopped most messages from getting through. But Hyunwoo and his team had found something interesting. The wall had tiny cracks in it. These cracks only lasted for a few seconds, but that was enough time for small bits of information to slip through. For 50 years, Earth had been listening through these cracks. They heard alien voices talking to each other across the galaxy. They learned alien languages. They copied alien star maps. Most important of all, they watched where the alien armies moved their ships. Hyunwoo pressed a button on his desk. A new screen came to life showing a map of nearby space. Red dots marked where alien ships were gathering. There were more red dots today than yesterday. Much more. Commander Taehyun needs to see this, Hyunwoo said to himself. He walked through long hallways cut into the rock under Seoul. The hallways were filled with people hurrying back and forth. Some wore military uniforms. Others wore the white coats of scientists. All of them looked worried. Taehyun was waiting in the war room when Hyunwoo arrived. The war room was huge with a ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. In the center was a table that showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Thousands of tiny lights moved slowly across the map like fireflies. "Show me what you found," Taehyun said. Hyunwoo touched the table, and new lights appeared on the map. These lights were different colors. Blue for one alien empire, green for another, yellow for a third. All of the lights were moving toward the same area of space. "They are gathering near the edge of our solar system," Hyunwoo explained. "The Zephyrian Empire has moved 200 ships to this position. The Crystalline Hegemony has moved 300 ships here. The Apex Confederation has moved 500 ships to this spot." Taehyun stared at the map. His face was calm, but his eyes showed fear. "How many ships total?" "At least 2,000 so far. Maybe more coming." The door to the war room opened. Admiral Jiun walked in with quick steps. She was young for an admiral, only 34 years old. But she was also the smartest military officer on Earth. Her black hair was pulled back tight and her uniform was perfect. When she spoke, everyone listened. "What do we know?" she asked. Taehyun pointed to the map. 3 alien empires are moving ships toward our barrier. We think they are planning something big." Jiun studied the map for a long time. She touched different areas, making the view change and zoom in. "Have we heard any messages about this?" Hyunwoo nodded. "Some, but the aliens are being very careful. They are using codes we have not broken yet." Another person entered the room. It was So Young, the head of Earth's Alien Studies Department. She carried a thick folder full of papers. Her glasses reflected the light from the map table. "I have been studying the alien messages for 3 months," So Young said. "I found a pattern. When the aliens talk about moving ships like this, it usually means one of two things. Either they are preparing to fight an enemy that threatens all of them, or they are preparing to destroy something they think is dangerous." The room became very quiet. Everyone understood what this meant. "What enemies do the aliens have?" Jiun asked. So Young shook her head. "None that we know of. The 3 empires control most of the galaxy. They have not fought a real war in over 100 years. Taehyun felt cold. "That leaves only one possibility. Us," Jiun said quietly. For 300 years, the Galactic Council had told Earth that the barrier was for protection. They said humans were too violent and needed to be kept away from other species until they learned to be peaceful. But now it seemed like the real reason was different. The barrier was not to protect the galaxy from Earth. The barrier was to keep Earth trapped until the aliens decided what to do with it. Hyunwoo looked at the map again. More red dots appeared every hour. "Admiral, what should we do?" Jihyun was quiet for a long moment. Then she pressed a button on the table. The room's lights dimmed and a new screen appeared on the wall. This screen showed Earth from space, blue and white and beautiful. "For 50 years we have been watching and learning," she said. "We always knew this day might come. The day when the aliens decided we were too dangerous to live." She pressed another button. The screen changed to show the moon. But instead of the gray, empty surface that most people knew, this image showed something different. Hidden under the moon's surface were huge tunnels and chambers. In these chambers, people in spacesuits worked on massive machines. We have not been sitting quietly all these years, Ji-yoon continued. We have been preparing. The screen changed again. Now it showed Mars, with its red surface covered in what looked like mining equipment. But Hyunwoo could see that the equipment was not for mining. It was for building things. Big things. The aliens think we are primitive, Ji-yoon said. They think we only have chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. They think we have maybe 100 small ships at most. So Young smiled for the first time in months. They are wrong. Another screen appeared showing the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. What looked like simple mining stations were actually something much more important. They were factories. They had been building in secret for decades. How many ships do we have? Taehyun asked. Ji-yoon's smile was cold and hard. 12,000. The number was so big that nobody spoke for a moment. 12,000 ships. The aliens had never seen anything like it from a single planet. The ships are hidden throughout the solar system, Ji-yoon explained. Some look like cargo vessels. Some look like research stations. Some are buried in asteroids, but all of them are ready for war. Hyunwoo felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. The aliens have more ships than us. Yes, Ji-yoon agreed, but they do not expect us to fight back. They think we will surrender or try to run away. They are not prepared for a real battle. The screens around the room began showing more information. Ship designs that looked nothing like the slow, clumsy rockets the aliens expected. Weapons that used technology stolen from alien messages over the decades. Defense systems that could protect Earth cities from orbital bombardment. We have another advantage, So Young added. We know their languages. We know their tactics. We have studied their weaknesses for 50 years. But they know almost nothing about us. Taehyun looked at the map of gathering alien ships. When will they attack? Soon, Ji-yoon said. Maybe days. Maybe weeks. But soon. She walked to the center of the room and looked up at the high ceiling. Send word to all our hidden bases. Tell them to prepare for Operation Breakout. After 300 years of silence, Earth is about to speak very loudly. Hyunwoo returned to his monitoring station with a new feeling in his chest. For the first time since he was a child, he believed that humanity might survive what was coming. The aliens had made one terrible mistake. They thought Earth would stay quiet and afraid. They were about to learn how wrong they were.